Centuries ago, there lived a man named Joseph. He was the youngest of 11 brothers and had gained the favor of his father. Upon seeing this, jealousy struck the brothers, driving them to sell Joseph into slavery. Joseph found himself working for a man named Potiphar, who had a wife named Zuleika. Upon casting her eyes on Joseph, she immediately became attracted to him, and when her husband was not around, she would prompt Joseph to lie with her. He refused her advances several times, since he had no interest in disgracing himself, nor did he wish to transgress against his master. However, Zuleika persisted, and one day she was able to catch him while there were no witnesses in the house, and upon her advance, she grabbed his garments and requested that she lie with him. Again he refused, so he fled, but this time she had kept a piece of his garment that she had held on to. Once her husband had returned, she showed him the garment and claimed that Joseph had his way with her while her husband was away. This resulted in Joseph being imprisoned, despite the fact that it never happened. Regardless, Potiphar believed his wife, and so Joseph was forced to serve time for a crime he did not commit. This is a story that appears in the Bible, yet it reads as if it could have happened today. #BelieveAllWomen seemed to be alive and well before we even had the ability to tweet about it on our smartphones. In modern times, women falsely accuse men for similarly asinine reasons as well. Given that this story has aged like wine, I am inclined to believe that this is a timeless aspect of female nature that generations of the past were well aware of, but that we have lost over the years. However, we already know why women are like this. They often want attention or want to save face in regards to being labeled a slut, so her social standing is literally the only thing that matters to her. The life of some random man means essentially nothing to her because she is intrinsically solipsistic. This has only been exacerbated with time, as the female empowerment of modern times inflates her ego to a level that should not be attainable. However, what interests me more is the seemingly timeless inclination for men to blindly believe women. Even in modern times, it is often men imprisoning other men without checking the facts or even ignoring evidence that points to the contrary. Is it because we are ignorant? Or is it something far greater that will lead to the ruin of Western civilization? To understand this, we must first look at what is known as in-group and out-group theory. An in-group refers to a group, be it a sports team or a race, in which the person psychologically identifies as a member. Note that it is psychological identification, so somebody who is Asian could still have an in-group of black people as long as they mentally identify with that group. An out-group is the opposite. It is a group that someone does not psychologically identify with. Being in an in-group does not necessarily mean that you'll have a bias towards that group. In fact, we will see that sometimes out-group preference can overpower an in-group bias. Another important outgrowth of this theory is out-group homogeneity, which refers to how people of a given group perceive members of an out-group. Generally speaking, they will generalize the members of an out-group, often using their negative traits. Perversely, they will see individuals in their own group as diverse and unique. This is why some people believe all Asians look the same, yet if you get somebody from China, they could easily tell if the Asian they were looking at was from Japan, Thailand, or Vietnam. They have an in-group that they fit into, which allows them to know what traits are unique to their individual members. Now that we got that out the way, let's examine an interesting study published in the early 2000s titled Gender Differences in Automatic In-Group Bias. Why do women like women more than men like men? Co-authored by Lori A. Rudman and Stephanie A. Goodwin, the paper details several experiments they ran on their participants in an attempt to understand what sort of biases exist between the sexes, and if there was a significant bias towards one gender or the other. They begin with the a priori assumption that men should be biased towards each other because they sought to use their data to explain the historical male dominance. Little did they know they would reveal the exact opposite of what they expected. As a result of their study, they found that both men and women had a strong positive bias towards women. Men showed significantly less in-group bias than women, but showed more out-group bias in favor of women. What this means is that both men and women attribute more positive traits to women than they do men. The way this manifests itself in the real world are these campaigns like #BelieveAllWomen, because clearly women can never lie about rape or sexual harassment. We also see it in the praising of single mothers, since they clearly are good people. They just got unlucky, I guess. Or even worse, it has to be the man's fault, because he is the one with all the negative traits, since she is a perfect angel. Something I found a bit interesting is that women who self-identified less with their gender and had a higher self-esteem had a reduced inclination to favor other women. This may help explain the purpose of this women are wonderful effect. It may serve to feed their self-image so that when they are sufficiently confident enough in themselves, it is not required and thus slowly wanes. Or perhaps they have a higher self-image because they are inclined to spend more time with men, and thus makes them feel more desired by the opposite sex. This may also explain why women hate their confident peers, because the women with confidence are less likely to supplicate to their desires. This is all just theory, but I'm interested in finding out if any of it does hold up through testing. Returning to the paper, we can see something interesting if we go a bit further down. Quote, people who are raised primarily by their mothers also implicitly favored women. These findings are consistent with our suggestion that maternal attitudes learned early in life spill over into gender attitudes, but only at the automatic level, unquote. This does wonders to explain why men of single mothers always seem to be simps and defend women's behavior no matter what they do. It is implanted into them, not even consciously, by their upbringing. This also explains why society is slowly becoming more feminine, because as the single motherhood rate rises, so do the number of simps and white knights that they are raising. What is worse is that single motherhood is only increasing with time, so I don't think this problem is going to get any better in our generation or even the next. The attitude towards women is a psychological consequence of Bateman's principle, which posits that the egg is more valuable than sperm. Thus, it would be more beneficial for a society to prioritize their women over prioritizing their men. This results in an intrinsic bias towards women developing over time, because having that bias was a dominant reproductive strategy. Unfortunately, it seems like these problems are not problems we can unlearn. There are parts of our genetic programming that have evolved over centuries to create the creatures we are today. While it may lead to our demise in current times, it helped our ancestors get us to this point, so I don't think it's unnecessary or even trivial. However, I believe it's kind of poetic that mankind's greatest asset, his mind, has also turned into his greatest downfall. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed, feel free to like and subscribe. I'm trying to put out daily content for a while, so that when things get busier for me, there's still a well of videos you guys can refer to while you await the next upload. But yeah, that's about it. So as always, stay prosperous.